All right, cool. Thanks everyone for joining today's call. Today we'll be introducing a bit about lean startups, lean methodologies, and also have a good friend and startup mentor, Adrian Tan, share his experiences about how to run lean as a business. So a bit, about what lean startup is. It's essentially a methodology or approach that helps a lot of early stage businesses launch their products. It relies on validated learning, experimentation, and iteratively, testing your business. So it essentially shortens the time span and the money invested to get a product out, but also allows you to measure the progress and gain valuable feedback from your customers. So today we have a very special guest, Adrian. He's a lean startup coach from the JFDI Accelerator in Singapore. A bit about Adrian. He's a teacher at General Assembly. He's teaching lean methods at his accelerator. He's also spent the past couple of years setting up a few startups on the side as well. So we're very lucky to have him talking about customer discovery, design thinking, growth hacking with lean methods. Adrian, welcome.
Hi, Will. I'm glad to be here. It's great to really share about what I've learned and what I've done. I'm really excited to meet up with all and get your questions for tonight.
Cool. So why don't we just start off the call? Why don't you share a bit more about yourself, Adrian, what you're currently doing with lean methods?
Yeah. So a little bit about myself, as Will have shared, I kind of stumbled into this whole startup thing. My background was I was a teacher in a high school, and I taught geography in a local school here. But at that point when Apple started launching the iPads, and you recall back in 2008, teachers and schools were just buying iPads thinking it's this magic wand that magically helps kids learn. So at that point I thought, hey, teachers need something to help them teach on an iPad, and which is why I started squarecrumbs.com. We were a edu platform for Singapore schools and to help kids learn on the go. Now, and then we joined the JFDI Accelerate because we realized that up to a certain point we ended up having a struggle scaling our business. That happens to a lot of startups, but essentially what we're doing is we kind of like besides not spending enough time on customer discovery, testing the business model on the scalability, we kind of end up like most businesses out there, which is a consulting model. So we ended up building stuff for our customers and not having that space to build our business model. So we applied to JFDI. Back then it was the first accelerator in Southeast Asia, and we were part of the very first batch. And that's when we decided, hey, okay, enough of this edutech thing. Let's move on to something new, something different. So we thought, okay, I'm gonna build a photo app, right? A photo app for parents, because that was when I had my first child, and I thought, okay, being a dad, I had problems syncing and arranging my photos. Why not build an app that helps me organize photos? My wife has photos on her phone, but I don't get access to it because it's not shared. So perhaps there's a problem there. So, but what we found out 3 months later is that parents don't really care, and we ended up building. It's a great feature, but not a great business, because it's just a good to have. It's a vitamin. It's not a painkiller. It's only a painkiller if people loses their phones. But back then, Google and Dropbox is solving that pain because it's helping you back up photos. But what we're doing is something that's additional on top of that. So that we learned it the hard way, and that startup failed. And by failing, I mean we set out certain metrics to say, okay, by this certain time, we're going to try to get X amount of customers. If not, we just move on and close it down. But in a traditional sense, most companies just say, okay, we're just going to do some software development on the side and do this thing. So I think what we've learned is that we have adopted the lean methodology a little bit late. And today, I think I'm going to share from my own personal experience on how I've used this to help all the 850 people as well as 69 startups that we have graduated out of the JFDI program.
That's really
Yeah.
cool. So tell me a bit more about, building something that people want. Like you said, there are a lot of people who build products because
Yeah.
they want to get, a sexy mobile app out or a
Yeah.
slick, design, landing page out. But tell me a bit more about understanding what your customers want,
Mm,
and building something around a real pain point, rather
yeah.
than a vitamin.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've been kind of sold a lot of things through the wonderful thing that's Silicon Valley, right? You hear about the wonderful stories about, an app that made millions of dollars, and then you hear a lot of stories about overnight successes. And we all think that there's this one magical thing that which is an app that you can build or a web app that you get out and magically things happen and people would flock and pay money for you. But but from experience, I think it's a really, really hard thing to start building it, to build a startup essentially, right? Which is why lots of startups fail. But then how do you kind of like, you hear this wonderful stat which is 9 in 10 startups fail, but yet every single day people are starting businesses. So what are people doing right and what are people doing wrong about it? I think from the very beginning, if your idea is solving a pain point, essentially that's a good place to start, because people would a business transaction occurs when someone pays you for a value, like something of value, and usually that value comes from solving someone's problems, right? So if like let's take for example Uber. Why is Uber so highly valued? It's because they are solving a pain point that people would face maybe 2 to 3 times a day, right? If you woke up late, you can't get a taxi to go to work because it's peak hour or it's raining, you will pay to get an on-demand ride, above the normal going rate, and then or you need to go to lunch. That's at the second trip, and then back home as a third trip. So that is kind of value being transacted there. So if you don't solve a problem, most times it's I think you can only do it in Silicon Valley. Like for example, I'm not sure how. I mean, Instagram is solving some problems, which is like it's solving the fact that there are a lot of shitty photographers out there taking ugly photos, right? So, but then there isn't like a business model yet when they first launch. But there was it solves something, and then they monetize it later on, right? But for most, I think Asian startups, and we need to think about like what value are we creating, and starting with a pain point is usually one of the best ways to understand what to build for your startup. So in the lean methodology, I think we start up with a lot of customer discovery, thinking about about what people really feel, and starting from there, what is the current technology that you can use to solve those problems, and innovate business models out of that. Yeah.
How do you pick the right problem to solve?
Yeah.
There's a lot of problems that you experience yourself, but
Mhm.
I mean, ultimately, as a first-time founder or first-time entrepreneur or someone who want to get into that scene, um,
Yeah.
it's quite easy to say, "Oh, there's this really sexy business in the US
Yeah.
that I want to copy and build myself." But you started your second business based on you having the pain point that your wife wasn't sharing the photos. But how do you end up picking the right problem, and a problem that's hard enough for
Yeah.
you to be able to solve yourself, but also
Yeah.
challenging enough for you to take that step into doing?
Yeah, I think first thing is there's this myth of the single founder. I think that's something that we've been sold all the time. Like we've watched Steve Jobs, right? The movie, read the book, and we think that that's you can do all things yourself. But the reality is really different, because I think if you ever started something yourself, whether it's a business, whether it's a band, whether it's some project, you realize that Number one, you are limited to what you know, and you don't know what you don't know. So it's always, I think, from the very beginning, I think there are a few things that I'll look for, and what we look for at JFDI is yes, you may have a bunch of problems you want to solve, but the follow-up question would be like, why are you the perfect person to solve this, right? Why is your team the perfect person to solve this? So from onset, what we look for is how big the problem is, because the bigger the problem, chances are the bigger the market is. And then if the problem you're solving is pretty like science fiction, like, you know, autonomous cars, flying cars, okay, then the next step is, right, why are you the right team to solve this thing? And if you have the ability and the technical know-how or the industry knowledge to solve these things, chances are the success rate would probably be much higher than if you had to do things by yourself. Having said that, I think, which is why I think QLC, what you guys are doing is a fantastic thing right now. What you're doing is allowing a lot of other people opportunities to learn, right? And for example, if you really want to be in a band and you had never had any exposure to music, I think you can start by you know, like being a roadie or a guitar tech or something like that, like you know, right, tuning the guitar, right? Start somewhere and learning the ropes and seeing that, okay, is this really what I want to do for the next 4 years of my life? If so, then yes, your personal motivation is there. Next, what is your technical ability? If you are not a technical person, what else can you do? And then you soon realize that there's a lot of things that you can do, right? A lot of things that you can do through sheer enthusiasm, energy, motivation, if you are non-technical. So for example, I just picked up like, okay, UX, right? User experience by myself. I realized that as a non-technical co-founder, I have to learn about how to speak to customers. I need to know how to conduct customer interviews. I didn't know how to make sense of those findings into tweaking that into features that I'm going to build for a product, right? So I think, so back to the question of how do you know what problems are worth solving? I think the first thing you've got to ask is the problem big enough? Because if you're looking for a venture-backed business, that's usually gotta be worth more than $100 million, and the $100 million ones are the starting point is tough problems to solve, right? So how big is the market? How big is the problem? Why are you the right person to solve this problem? And the third thing then is, how innovative can you be by de-risking your assumptions? Because all these things that you've been thinking of, you know, like you can get infatuated with your idea. Like I always tell friends that having a business idea is kind of like falling in love. Your best friends don't want to tell you how sucky the idea is, out of, you know, respect for you. But I think if you were to look at it from a more of a methodological experiment, you need to add certain boundaries to your idea, right? So if the problem is worth solving, how much time do you have? Because time is the most important resource for any startup. Number one, you have no money. Two, you are probably working on it on your free time on top of a day job. And three, you need to convince co-founders to jump in, right? So how much time can you give to test whether these ideas are worth solving? So I think what I like about the lean methodology is that it allows people with ideas to highlight things that they don't know, because the biggest problem with startups is uncertainty. And I think what the lean methodology and lean canvas does is it highlights that the uncertainty and what to focus on and how to test those ideas.
So we have quite a few individuals on QLC projects at the moment, and this week they're going to be working on the lean canvas and applying lean methodologies to understand the businesses. So why don't you share a bit more about how to get started, what to look out for, what are they actually trying to understand about the business and how they can solve it using lean methods. And just for everyone on the call, if you have any questions that you'd like to ask, on the left-hand side of Google Hangouts is a Q&A section. So just drop a note. I'll read out the question, and later either myself or Adrian would answer. So over to you, Adrian.
Yeah, so I'm just pulling up a slide for that, because I think using the lean, let me see if I could share it on the screen here. There you go. So you can see over here, I think the thing that I like about the lean canvas is that it gives you the ability to kind of target, like, okay, what to work at. So for example, you can see the numbers, like problems, right, on the left-hand side, and customer segment. So many times when you have an idea, what happens is that you kind of focus on this part here, which is the solution, right? Whether you are creating the next generation payment gateway, or you are creating a crowdsourced art platform. Most of the times, founders will focus on the solution. But when you're looking at the lean canvas, it forces you to take a step back and think, hey, what problem am I really solving? And two, who are the customers that are going to buy from me, And what that does, it really helps you understand in detail, okay, whether number one, the solution that you're creating makes sense. Because most of the time, if your solution does not solve a problem, and that's the problem right there, right? Which is nobody's going to buy your product or your service. And two, if you don't understand who your customers are, then you might be targeting the wrong segment, which is the users. So let me share from my own experience. When I was building Square Crumbs, we were building an, like in edutech, especially, if anybody who's building an edu technology app, let them know it's tough, because there are so many different people. Your customers could be schools, universities, or parents, or students, right? And the users could be any one of them. So if you are selling, that is a customer. Whoever buys from you and pays from you, that's a customer. But whoever uses it, is just merely using your product. So for example, if you are using Google right now, you are a user. You're not a customer of Google. The customer of Google will be the ad companies that are paying to Google to target you, right? And if you're Uber, your customer is really the people who need to transportation, and it's also drivers, because they pay their commission to you. So when you're working on a lean canvas right now, I think the first few things you need to look at, I think for the week, is to understand, number one, what are the top 3 problems, who your customers are, who your users are, and then think about, like, okay, why is this idea that you have? So what's that clear, unique value proposition that you are proposing before moving on to the other boxes?
So I have a question, Adrian. So it seems as though you prioritized the problem and the customer segments, or different channels to the customers, over the solution. Why is that the case? Why are you starting with a problem rather than just a solution?
Well, I think the issue about building something is you're always kind of distracted with quite a few things. There's a bunch of stuff that you need to do, right? Like for example, there's so many things going on at a startup. Where do you start? If you're a designer, you probably would end up start designing stuff, and if you're an engineer, you start building things, and if you're a business person, the temptation is you start pitching and going to your father-in-law and asking for money, right? So I think that's fine, because that's our natural instinct. But going back to the problem, it helps to understand what's your main objective. What are you building? And if you ever think about, heard the TED Talk by Simon Sinek about starting with why, I think that's a great place to start. Why are you building this? Because whatever you're building is going to take up lots of time, and time is your opportunity cost, right? Those times of you sitting behind a computer at your day job, dreaming about the idea you're going to build, that's time as well, right? That energy could be spent on something else, and so I think starting with the problem gives you a perspective on why are you building this thing, and with that, I think it helps you also prioritize what to build, because on step 4, let me see, back to the solutions, right? The top 3 features. There's so many things you can build in the lean startup, like in a startup, but what aspect of that, to focus on. So if you look at the top 3 features, by identifying the problems and assuming if you've done the customer discovery and talking to people, finding out that yes, this is the top problem that all of my interviewees face, having spoken to maybe 20 or 30 people, 75% of them face this. And if given the current technology that you have, you can't solve number 1, then you don't need to build that, right? Look at problem number 2. And if the current technology that you have right now allows you to solve number 2 with just 1 feature being built, what that does is it gives you a clarity on what to focus on and what's the minimal viable product that you can build with the least amount of effort and the least amount of time to get it in front of customers, get real feedback, validate that this is actually essentially the solution that is needed. So why I think that starting with problems is a great thing is because you essentially it helps you prioritize like what you're doing.
So let's talk about this whole prioritization aspect. The typical QLC candidate comes to our project. There's already a startup that they're assigned to, and there's tasks that are assigned that will help the business. So it could be business development, helping them find partners. It could be digital marketing, so improving their customer acquisition channels. It could be helping them rebrand, so looking at what competitors in the market that are doing well, and how they can essentially apply the same, design, typography, content management, and bring it back to the business. Can you tell me a bit more about lean ways to execute, prioritizing the right tactics, essentially to get the word out, get the product out to customers, or get something out in a very quick way to start measuring results?
Okay, I think if you're working with businesses, whether big or small, I think in the recent years there have been a move towards lean enterprise as well. So for example, we've been working with big clients of ours, big companies approaching us to test product features or test a marketing strategy. So those are great, and you can use the lean methods for that. So back to the lean canvas, you realize that in any business, I think the very first thing that your candidates can do is to really think about the businesses that you're helping. What are what is the key metrics that you need to be measured for your success? So for example, if they have a product that's out for a few years already, or maybe it's out for 6 months, and it's not converting customers quickly. So what I'll look at is what are we tracking? Are we tracking downloads, for example, in a key metric? Are we tracking downloads? If you're tracking downloads, then it's not really an important is what we call a vanity metric, right? It's something that look good, but what it could be that the thing that you are tracking is activation, which is all of the downloads, how many people have been activated, and all of the number of people who are activated, how many are returning. So retention will be a key. How do you measure retention? Is it customers visiting your site once a week or twice a week? What is success to that business? And I think if you guys are also looking at acquiring customers, then I would suggest you focus on channels as well. How are you getting in front of customers? So if you are there in the company helping with growth hacking or marketing, I'll look at the path to customers as the main thing. So there's a great resource called Traction. This book called Traction. There's 19 ways to get to traction. So if what are the methods that you need to get in front of people, test those. For is it trade shows? Is it getting in front of speaking at events? Is it content marketing on blogs? What are the best channels that you can convert people into your site? So I'll look at those. But if you look at the others, I'm not sure if the participants in QLC are working in detail with the founders, but if you are, I think it would be great to also help them on what essentially as the revenue stream. So for example, for Dropbox is pretty understandable, right? Your revenue stream is a monthly or yearly model. Your lifetime value is pretty straightforward. Like I pay $9 a month for 12 months, and I'm never going to cancel it because I find the camera upload is pretty useful, much better than Google Photos. So the lifetime value of a customer like me, was going to hang on for the next 2-3 years is pretty much higher than other businesses, right? And then I also look at if you're into that, what does it cost to acquire a customer? For example, all these marketing that you do, if you're an e-commerce site, you know that they pay a lot to market to a person that only buys one product, and that's quite a high customer acquisition cost. But if you are like your site like Uber, you realize that actually it costs really little, maybe $20 with a free credit to acquire the customer, and that person would stay on and use Uber because it's much easier to use than all the competitors out there. So the customer acquisition cost is pretty low compared to the lifetime value of the customer. So really, I think the lean canvas is a great way to start. And I think one thing I want to highlight for all of you who are listening is don't be scared if there are boxes that are empty. The thing is, if the boxes are empty, is great because it only highlights an area of the business that's risky. So I think that's a good. The lean canvas is a great place to start, and I'll highly encourage anyone starting on this to start with that.
That's really cool. So for those on the call, I'll probably be distributing the links and references to the books that Adrian mentioned. I think two really interesting points that a lot of first-time founders, first-time entrepreneurs come across is the whole concept of vanity metrics. And it's actually really important to be aware of this, because if you're working for an existing startup or helping out on a QLC projects, it's actually really important to understand what metrics, what key pointers are critical to growing the company. Adrian, can you highlight a bit about benchmarking, and comparing vanity metrics versus metrics that actually matter for the company?
So I think the one of the main things is that I think Ashmara, he has a great blog post on what metrics to look out for. But I think for the onset, I think the very first things to understand that metrics are important is a great start for anyone, right? So the reason I think taking a step back, why do we need to have metrics? I think that's the important question, because as a founder, you are pulled in so many directions, and speaking from experience, and I'm sure Bill will understand as well, it's just a pretty hard thing to do running a startup because there's so many things that's going on. But then a lot of it is distraction, because as a founder, you are also driven by your esteem. So for example, if the startup is your baby, the business is your dream, and but then there's no one objective way of measuring how how important this of where to start, right? So for example, if founders get emotional, they do, they get temperamental sometimes. But if you go back to a matrix, what you're doing is you are telling everyone that, okay, let's not measure on some esteem and all these things. Let's measure on things that matter. What does it take to help your business do better, right? So if I were to take a comparison of like pregnant mothers, right? For example, there you base yourself on the benchmark on how well other kids or other babies that are in the womb is being measured. So you have a benchmark to know that, okay, my baby is okay, right? And if it's not, then okay, what can I do to solve and improve that? So mothers take like DHA, they take vitamins, they go for more scans, they go to the doctor more often, right? So there are a bunch of stuff you can do, right? That mothers are already doing. So for a startup, it's the same thing. Having downloads is just one thing. It's a great thing to have. If you just launched your app, it's fantastic. It's great for team morale. People know, to see that amount of downloads is fantastic for a while. But then if you realize that the conversion is like less than 1% of those of people who activate meaning having download your app, they open your app, they sign up with you. So whether they click on and give you their Facebook information or Twitter information, or put in their email address and click send, up to that point, I think the downloads don't really mean a thing, right? Until the point that I give you my information. If I don't go back to you, at least you have my information to try and get me back. So if you remember the very first time that you used Dropbox, so how did you discover about Dropbox? It's somebody sent you a link and say, I want to share this file with you, right? And once you got that, you had no choice, because you needed a file and you get free space, and it's your friend that sent it to you. So you would open it, and in order to get that file, you need to sign up. But if you did not install Dropbox on your computer, they had your email address and they sent you a follow-up message and say, we noticed that you have not installed Dropbox. Would you like to give us a try? So I think that is something really, really important, because those metrics matter then, because it gives it gives the company a second and third chance to get back to that customer and help onboard them back into the app or the business. So I think those metrics are more important, and I think through QLC, if you guys are focusing on like the growth hacking, customer acquisition courses, I think like understanding the lean marketing funnel and all those stuff is really, really much more necessary than I think just pure vanity metrics. Yeah,
That's really cool, Adrian. Quite project specific. So we do have a lot of projects that involve understanding, firstly, the metrics that the business is measuring against, but secondly, looking at identifying different ways to improve those metrics through competitive analysis. So, the way that you spoke about, using the analogy of the mothers who have a kid in their womb to improve the health of the kid, that would take vitamins or, have more checkups, and then applying it in a business sense, look at something like, look at the business like Dropbox. They capture your email, they send a follow-up email if they do not, download Dropbox onto their platform or share or refer a friend. What are your thoughts on, looking at what competitors do, essentially sneaking or copying, things that are good, or, marketing efforts that work well? What are your thoughts on that?
I think as a startup or a small company, or I think it's always great to keep an eye out on what other people are doing, because number one, you do not have the budget of Google, but Google does, right? And Google can employ PhDs, they can employ designers, and they have a team of designers debating on how many shades of blue or what shade of blue they should include on their site. Or whether you're Amazon, having scientists debate about how much white space there should be on your website. So if you don't have the resources to be like Google or Amazon, I think the very first place you can start is just copy what they do, and test it for yourself. I'm not saying copying for copying's sake, but testing it out, right? Like how many sites tested out Pinterest, infinite scroll, and realized it didn't work out for them, right? But having said that, I think it's always easier to look at what your competitor does and make tweaks to it. And I think we all do that all the time. I mean, Apple does that too, right? Let's look at some of the stuff that have been coming out is really what makes sense for you. Can you adapt certain things that your competitors are doing? Or you could, at the very least, make it a benchmark on what people are doing out there and make key decisions on what to proceed with your own platform and your own app. So I think it's good to look at your competitors, look at what people are doing out there, and then make the decisions yourself and what to proceed for your own project.
What do you mean by testing things? So you mentioned, taking their ideas and testing onto your own platform or testing with your customers. What does it actually mean in the context of lean methodology?
So for example, like for some of the startups that we work with here, they do have MVP, and now they're testing how do I get people to know about our business, right? So back to the lean canvas, what we really want them to test is how do you communicate your unique value proposition to a potential customer. So in this case, what would advise them to do is do what we call an A/B test. So if you were to create a landing page, and what would you put on a landing page to kind of tell people about what you do, right? So for example, my startup is building, what is that? What is that thing that or that helps other people recommend you? So if somebody says, oh, I'm using this app because, what is that? What is that phrase that they use? Test that, right? Put it on your site. And there are great tools that allow you to do that, like unbounce.com, I think allows you to split. Like if you were to put, say, 1,000 visitors to one page and then another 1,000 visitors to another page, and run it over a month or maybe 2 weeks, and just track and see whether site A converts more people or site B converts more people, and then you can make choices based on that. So for example, if site A actually converts 30% more than site B, then I'll go with site A and make the relevant changes to that. So that's what we call testing and validation here.
So we have a good question that came through, but I'll probably elaborate a bit further. The question is, how do I make sure problems with my minimum viable product won't hurt my brand? And I'm just, for those on the call, I'm going to elaborate a bit further. So when you're doing a test or an MVP or minimum viable product, it's essentially sending the quickest, dirtiest, thing out there to your customers to test. It might be, a really simple landing page. It might be a simple logo. It might be a really hacked together Facebook ad. And all the branding that you've put together for your existing platform, that's time, money, design spent. But, building this MVP in 20 minutes, obviously is a lot less time. So I guess the question is, how can you make sure that, firstly, it doesn't matter that an MVP is a lot hacked together than the original product? If so, or if not, will it hurt the brand?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and it's a question that's been asked quite a lot. To answer that question at first, is it an existing business or is it a startup, right? So if you are a startup, chances are people don't really know about you, so you don't really have a brand to worry about. But if you are, say, working for an MNC and you want to apply lean methodology and you want to hack together a prototype, like what we do here at JFDI, we've been working with some big companies, and they said, the problem with us big companies is we can't fail, but we can work with you. So essentially, what we're doing is we're kind of like the black ops team for those guys. Like we help create like new brands and new product lines and help them test first. And if they fail, it's fine. Nobody knows about them. But if they do well, great. That parent company comes in full on into that project. But if you're talking about a startup, essentially you don't really need to worry about whether it's scrappy or not. Why? Because I think if you look at all the big guys, right, or what we call the big guys now, if you look at Dropbox, all they had was essentially an animated video of how to use Dropbox, right? And if you look at Buffer, all they had was just a landing page with a button that says plans and pricing. So if those guys did it successfully, I think we don't need to worry about brand as of yet, because number one, you're a startup and you're still growing as you go, and people are quite forgiving actually, because the chances are that those guys don't really come back to you unless you have something more to offer them. Yeah.
So
I hope that answers the question.
So another question that's just come through, what are examples of lean methods that startups have used?
Okay, so I think if you, is the question more specific to like lean marketing or a certain aspect, or is just
So,
any
so
startup?
I think it's examples of different lean tactics that businesses have used. Okay,
so I think I can draw an example from one of our startups, which is our HealthMate from India. So I'm just gonna share the screen just in a bit. Let's see that. Okay. So our HealthMate, they are actually they applied to JFDI to be more kind of like a fitness app, and then they soon realized that as they were going through the whole program and as they were figuring out how to build their solution, they kind of stumbled on a problem, which is what a lot of businesses face. That number one, lots of people are building fitness apps, and two, what kind of added value can they create and bring to the table? So what we advise them to do is think about, okay, so what essentially is the problem that you're solving? Is the problem that people need to know what their fitness is? Or what are the big things that you're concerned about? So as they went thinking through this period, one of the founders kind of realized that as an Indian national living overseas, one of the biggest challenge that he faced is wanting to know that his parents back home have actually a good healthcare, right? Like they have been going to the doctor regularly and getting a health check. But then one of the fathers of the founder fell sick, and then when he discovered is that his father, as all great Asian dads do, they were saving the money and not going for checkups. So what they found is that the problem that they face is pretty straightforward. There's a very unique Asian situation, which is parents don't want to be cared for, but they don't want to spend your money going to the doctor. So what they found is if they would go to the doctor and pay the doctor first, the parents then have no choice because it's been paid, and then the doctors are more now incentivized to give you the health report of your dad and get more accurate information instead of them lying to you. So that's one example of how a startup of ours decided to pivot their business model into something that's big, and they have been scaling really rapidly. They signed up 3,000 doctors within the first few months. So there's one example of how a startup used lean methodology. I mean, there are many other examples. So I think to be specific, looking at like the lean canvas, there are all these different boxes. I think each one of those boxes is a way for you to experiment and test. So if you would fill up your lean canvas and realize that there are certain boxes that are pretty empty, then I'll focus my energy and focus and test those boxes. So if your unique value proposition is not clear, then I'll spend some time understanding and tweaking what my unique value proposition is till somebody can pitch your product better than yourself. I think then that will be the test that I'll run. If your revenue model is unsure of how people will pay, then I'll spend time thinking about how I'm going to convert people to pay. And that issue is very clear in Asia. I mean, in the West, it's pretty straightforward, right? People have credit cards. It's easy. You just swipe your credit card, payment gets done. But even if you're adopting or copying a business from the West into Asia, say, in developing economies, such as Thailand or Vietnam, if you want to do Uber for Vietnam, how do you collect money? Not everyone has a credit card, So there are certain tests that you need to run to tweak your business model and your payments. So I think to answer the question, the lean methodology is one format of helping you think, think as an experimentation. So what to test on is really something that you need to decide how to focus your attention into running those experiments.
What I loved about using the lean canvas is how simple it was, to get tests going through. Like you said, you have so many, different areas of the business or different angles that you can start approaching. But the way that the whole testing method works is you pick, only 1, 2, or 3 different tests per week, and then you keep tweaking and measuring results. So can you share a bit more about that whole process of, finding, in the context of, the Vietnamese Uber, right? How can you, what's the best strategy to firstly find the right test and optimize the test for that? Because, in the context for QFC, for example, one of our biggest tests in early days was figuring out whether or not LinkedIn was a good channel to approach customers. So we did something that didn't scale, which was manually adding people via LinkedIn, sending them a manual message, and doing that like 100 times and seeing how many people came back. So we've been able to refine that process and add in, automated tools to contact the customers. But for those who are, essentially trying to figure out tests for either their own business or the QLC project that they're working on, where do you even start? Especially if they're new to Lean Canvas, new to Lean ways of doing things.
Yes. So the assumption is that I think before you even do any tests, I think the main thing you perhaps need to think about is really, do you know who your customer really is? Have you talked to them? Have you understood what their mentality is? I think before going into really quantitative data sort of tests, I think the first thing is understand the qualitative data, like talking to people. If it's just one person, I think it's a great place to start, like understanding if you're working, I'm assuming that you're helping a company on a project, and you want to jump straight into Lean Startup. I think the first step I think will be beneficial for you is to really understand who those customers really are. And if you can get online and Skype them and talk to them and understand what makes them buy from your company, I think that's a great starting point. Then, only then after you understood those customers, go back into the lean canvas and really start thinking about like, okay, if you're focused on conversions, like customer acquisition, then I would think, okay, where are my customers hanging out, right? Are they hanging out on LinkedIn? Are they hanging out on meetup.com? Are they hanging out on trade shows? Right. The problem that a lot of tech companies face is that they don't hang out with their customers. Right? They just hang out with tech geeks. Like one of the funny stories that I had was, like we run this JFDI open houses, and for those who are overseas, you're welcome every time you're in Singapore. It runs every Friday from 6 to 8, and it's a way of mixing the community, inviting people from the community, whether you're a student, you're an enthusiast, like a startup enthusiast, or you're just a professional who wants to find out more about the startup world. Just come on over and talk. And then we have a lot of people who come over and then say, it's so hard to find a tech CEO. and I've lost track on how many times that has occurred. Like, people come up to me and, do you know someone who's technical? I want him to be a co-founder. And I laugh at it because it's kind of like a guy going to a bar and saying, where are the hot chicks at? Like, so the issue is perhaps if you don't find them, you're hanging out at the wrong place. And I think that's the same as if you were wanting to growth hack and you need to find out where their customers are hanging out, right? So back to the Dropbox story. I think I like the story because the very first MVP that Drew Houston tested was actually the animated video on how Dropbox really works, without even building the full-fledged app in itself. So what he did was that he posted, like, he started with something. Okay, where would my customers be? Where would my early adopters be hanging out? And back then, he knew that all the geeks, the customer would probably be a geek, early adopter, feel the pain of having to use pen drive, thumb drive, floppy disk, whatever, right? And to send a file. And where are these guys hanging out? And his hypothesis then is that my early adopters who would use Dropbox are hanging out at places like Dig or Reddit. And what he did was to post a video on Dig back then, and then it got a lot of shares, a lot of people commenting on it, and that's how he realized he has something that people want. Is when people started signing up. So I think to answer the question, it's really back to who your customers are, what does your product solve, where does your customers hang out. Sometimes it's online, but depending on the product, most times it might not be online as well. So for example, take for instance Carousel, one of the C2C app here in Singapore, that helps you sell things within 10 seconds. They started off thinking, okay, how do I populate my app with items to sell, right? So they're kind of like Craigslist for the mobile, but it works way better than Craigslist. And they started off going to flea markets, right? They started off saying, if I don't have, like, on a platform, right? So I'm talking about marketplace here. If I don't have a seller, I won't have a buyer. So my priority now is to get as many sellers on board as possible. Just like Uber, right? If I don't have cars, I won't have anyone using my app. So my priority is putting cars on the road. Or Airbnb, I need to put apartments inventory online. So what they did was they went to flea markets and get them people seed items, get sellers online. They went to schools, they went to universities, because that's where they thought that the early adopters would be, because university students want to party, they don't really have money, they would sell their own things just to go party, and then that's the assumption they're making. And people would buy and sell textbooks, right? So that's how they kind of seeded inventory on the site, and before it growing to be quite massive right now. So I think one of the best ways to start is, who is your customer? Back to the lean canvas. Who is your customer? Where are they hanging out? If it's a trade show, go to a trade show. If you're working on like a like a mother app for mothers, I think the best places to go would be mothers forums, right? Where the hobbyists are hanging out. I think, and just go there and be honest and get as much feedback as you can.
So we have about 5 minutes left to the call, and I think we'll probably take one more question, which is a good segue to what you just said. And the question is, what's the best way to approach customers? So I'm guessing, earlier you said, scheduling a Skype call or, doing a quick interview, being honest and transparent. But for someone who's, trying, for a QLC candidate or a first-time founder who's looking to get in touch and understand the pain points of their potential customer, what's, good strategy to do that?
I think one of the good strategies is to, I think if you're working on a project that has been ongoing for some time, I think you have what we call your power users, right? Like power users, people who have been using the product over and over again. I think that's a great place to start. So like contacting them, offering them either free credits or just to have a chat with you, or just sending them a customized, like personalized, automated email saying, thank you for being a customer. We really want to hear what you like about us, what you don't like about us, help us improve. I think that's one easy way to start. And if not, I think if you're, for example, if you're working on an F&B, like your app for restaurants, then I'll go contact restaurant owners, or even if I'm in restaurants, I'll try to speak to the staff as much as possible on what's their pain, and if you have this app. So this is what we call solution interviews, right? You can either interview your existing customers or people who don't know about you and get and listen to their feedback. But the challenge then is what to do with the feedback. I think that's another story, because a lot of times you get differing information, and most of the times you need to kind of spend time sifting through, like, shall I listen to my customer or listen to my technical co-founder or listening to my mentor? But I think if you have done your research in speaking to customers and understanding, you are kind of the expert already, and I think by then you probably have some gut instinct to make quick decisions on what to act on.
Cool. So thanks so much for your time today, Adrian. Really appreciate you sharing more on lean startups and your background. For those on the call, that's everything that we're going to talk about today. If you have any questions, you can redirect it back to our forum, or I'll be sharing, Adrian's Twitter handle, so you can post any emails or messages to him. But again, thanks so much for joining today's Fireside. Till you see you again next week.
Thanks everyone.
Guys. Bye.
Bye.